Welcome to episode 13 of the Minifect. It's a podcast where I talk about sports and games. And this is the episode I really wanted to make. When I started this podcast recently, I was like, I want to make this episode so bad because something changed this year. Something was different. The Minnesota Gophers were good. I mean, PJ Fleck came here and changed everything. He turned this franchise around and made this dead audience really electric. I never really paid attention to the Minnesota Gophers until this season. I would watch a game or two. I mean, I'd root for them. All Minnesota teams I would root for because that's my hometown. And so all teams I would root for, but never did I pay attention like this. I mean, I watched the bowl games. I watched a lot of the Big Ten games that they played. Beat Penn State, big game, stormed the field. Love that game. We're going to talk about that later. But so I selected 4 players that will go from the Gophers and I think will make the NFL, whether they're drafted, undrafted. These are 4 players that I think will. And usually I do this at the end of my episodes. But if there's anyone I'm missing that you think will make the NFL out of this Minnesota Gophers team, just let me know down below whether you think the player will get drafted, undrafted, who I'm missing, and so at any point in the video, you can pause, go down there, let me know. While you go down there, make sure you hit the like button to help the channel. And so let's get started off to it with my favorite player. I'm going to go highest probability of them getting drafted to the Minnesota Vikings to lowest probability or possibility. And we're going to start it off with my favorite player, Antoine Winfield Jr. His father, obviously, being Antoine Winfield Sr. I saw him play a little bit, and I love safeties. If I could play in the NFL, if I could, I'm obviously like super skinny and I can't. I mean, I could work myself to it, but too much work. I'm not going to do that. And I would play safety because something about just like the safety position, I just love these players. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings safeties are so good all the time. And I just love to see these players just make the offense miserable. It just makes me happy. I don't know why. Shutting up fans, like when you play the Packers, you just shut up the fans and they have nothing to be happy about. That just brings me joy. I don't know why. And so that's what safeties really do. I mean, they stop big plays from happening. You can't go, if you go past the safety, well, now the fans just start cheering way louder and just to shut them up all the time. And that's what safeties really do the most. And first, let's get into why they would take a safety. I talked recently and I was saying the safety position, safety and linebackers, is something the Minnesota Vikings are so good at. I mean, something about that. They just are so great at it. And they have 4 safeties that looked great this last season. Harrison Smith, obviously, every year looks great. And then Anthony Harris, 7 interceptions. Are you kidding me? How? And then they talked. Rick Spielman during the combine was asked a lot of questions about, obviously the biggest one being this $21 million cap space. He was talking about the free agents. Everson Griffin, he was saying, will be back. I think that's what I was saying. I think Everson Griffin will be back for one more season and then probably go somewhere where he can finish off the rest of his career. But Everson Griffin is too loved by this team. I mean, one of the team captains for a long time. And I think they can't get rid of him now. I mean, he's going to, as long as Mike Zimmers is there, I feel like Everson Griffin is there. And that's just something that I saw coming and I think will happen. And then Rick Spielman also talked about Anthony Harris and said nothing I wanted to hear about Anthony Harris. I mean, I was saying this is a player the Vikings need to bring back. I mean, the duo safeties were so great this last season. Running Harrison Smith in the back, stopping everything from happening. Anthony Harris picking off every quarterback. I mean, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. He was picking off everyone. And Matt Ryan twice. I mean, are you kidding me? This player is so good. But yeah, he was saying like it's going to be too rough to bring him back. There's no cap room to bring back another safety and pay 2 safeties all this money. It's just I want it to happen, and I think it could happen. It could happen, but you would need a cut Rhodes, cut Elflein, cut other players. Well, you don't really need to cut Elflein. He's on his rookie contract, but Rhodes for sure. And then another couple players to really bring this player back. And but really, you can hit on a safety late in the draft. I mean, Antoine Winfield is expected to go 3rd round. Vikings should take him 2nd round. This is what I think. The Vikings should take Antoine Winfield 2nd round. 1st round, grab a corner, grab a defensive tackle. I don't know, someone. And then so that's what I like the most. And then I think Antoine Winfield is ready to be a starter. I saw this guy play enough in college where I'm like, this guy can play. And he has to be a starter out of college. I think whatever team he's going to go to, he's going to really impress them in the practicing, and he's going to be a starter out of college. Well, a starter with someone else. Even they can use him free safety, strong safety, whatever. He can do a lot. And I want this player. He's so athletic. He lit up the combine. He did everything you want to see. I mean, ran a 4.45. What? That's insane for a safety. 36-inch vert though. That's not that great, but 124-inch broad. I mean, this player is athletic. He's great with his hands, catches, tackles, everything, and I want Antoine Winfield on a Minnesota Vikings jersey. However, the possibility is not that likely. But next up, we have Tyler Johnson from my hometown, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and as PJ Fleck would say, elite. I think Tyler Johnson is ready to be a third string wide receiver in whatever team he goes to. He can trio up perfectly with other wide receivers, and obviously with the Vikings having a great receiving core, but they need someone else. I was saying this earlier. I was saying the Vikings need to bring in a wide receiver. I don't want it to be the top 2 rounds, not the first 2 rounds. With Tyler Johnson, maybe you need to use a second-round pick on him, but I wouldn't. No. Third round. I think he will go third round, maybe to the Vikings. This wide receiver class is so deep, and we could hit on a great receiver in the third round, and that's what I want to see. So take Tyler Johnson in maybe the third round, who can trio up perfectly with Diggs and Thielen. And think about it. I was saying, I said it multiple times. The season goes horribly, okay? It theoretically, say the season goes horribly. The season can go 2 ways. You compete for a Super Bowl, or it goes the opposite direction. You're halfway through the season, 4-5. Not looking great. You get so many trade offers for Diggs because Diggs still doesn't want to be here. Okay, Diggs would rather get the ball, and he'll get the ball somewhere else. So I'm going to say doesn't want to be here, even though I get annoyed when people say that because he is okay with being here, but whatever. Then you have to trade Diggs. I mean, if you get a great offer and it's like halfway through the season, you're not going to compete for a Super Bowl. You have to trade Diggs. And then your wide receivers will both be Minnesota grown. I mean, if Tyler Johnson looks amazing and looks like he could be a 2, which either way, you're going to throw away the season anyways if you're 4-5. I mean, you're not going to compete for a Super Bowl at that point. So you could have Tyler Johnson and Adam Thielen, and you'll still sell out tickets. I mean, your two core wide receivers are both from Minnesota. I mean, Adam Thielen being from some small town never heard of, and then Tyler Johnson being from where the Dome is here in Minneapolis. And I don't know. I feel like it'll still sell out tickets from a business side of things, and then they can rebuild to go for the future. Maybe hit on a quarterback in the next year's draft or something if the season goes horribly, and make some big trades. So I think Tyler Johnson is the second highest possibility of being in a Minnesota Vikings uniform, and I think he will be a 3 out of college. Whatever team takes him, or I don't think any team will take him as a 2. That just doesn't seem right. But a 3, and then to plan to use him as a 3, if he blows up and like makes him surprised in practicing, then maybe use him as a 2. But I don't see this guy being anything higher than that out of college. In the future, maybe. I've seen him do a lot of things. Lit up the Outback Bowl game. We would not have won that game if it wasn't for him. I think he got the only 2 touchdowns. I don't remember if there was another one. Maybe there was a rushing touchdown, something. But Tyler Johnson got 2 touchdowns in the Outback Bowl game, and we beat Auburn's defense. I mean, Auburn's defense is amazing. They got 2 of the top defensive tackles in this draft. And really, Tyler Johnson, third round, you might have to. I see him being in the third round with the Vikings. I mean, there's so many receivers that are going to get taken before him. One more thing about Tyler Johnson. He is so healthy. He's going to get taken. Teams love people that can play as many games as he did. Out of his 4 seasons with the Minnesota Gophers, only missed 2 games in like his sophomore year or something like that. Played all of the other games. Now, for those of you that don't really understand, that's not common. To stay that healthy as a receiver, where you're getting banged up all the time if you're a starting receiver, and to stay that healthy when you're undersized compared to a lot of these players that could be tackling you, like these linebackers jumping on top of you, that's not very common to play that many games, and I love that. I mean, to have a third string wide receiver that's as healthy as him that can step into the starting role when one of your starting receivers go down. I mean, Adam Thielen went down this year. Diggs went down a couple years back. To have someone step into that role, BC did, but the offense just didn't look that great. I mean, it looks good because you still have Kyle Rudolph, Irv Smith, Dalvin Cook. You have a ton of playmakers on this offense still, but BC just didn't look like he could play that long as a 2-string. And I think BC, good third string, but it's bringing in Tyler BC, You know what I'm saying. And then now this is where we're going into like not very possible territory. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings linebackers are so good. I mean, Anthony Barr, first team All Pro 2 years back. Adam Zimmer, what are you doing? He was so good, and then they started using him against coverage or other things. Why are you not using Anthony Barr? What he's good at? Anthony Barr lining him on the outside was so good, and then all of a sudden are lining him on the outside of the line even as a defensive end. Like Anthony Barr is so good at that. He's so quick and good with his hands, everything. And then they wanted to use him for other things. Like you have Eric Kendricks, who was first team All Pro this last year, looked great. Eric Wilson stepping in and even looking just as good as Barr, if not better, because I was surprised this player came out of nowhere and did this. Anthony Barr getting pancaked by Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, what is going on with you? Like I don't think it's even his fault. It's Adam Zimmer for not using him what he's meant for. But anyways, we're gonna get into these linebackers. So I'm gonna talk about them both at the same time because I'm kind of low on time. I got to go to work soon. So Kamal Martin and Carter Coughlin. Carter Coughlin. This player is so loved by this team. Very electric, as PJ Fleck would say, very elite. He can do a lot of things. Line him on the outside. I don't think Carter Coughlin's going to get taken by these Vikings because I think he impressed a lot of scouts at the combine, and a lot of teams were looking at him like, oh, this player gets healthy a lot. He can do a lot of things. And I think Carter Coughlin will get taken 5th, 6th round. And I don't think the Vikings are going to use I know the Vikings are going to use a high pick on a linebacker, but maybe in the late rounds, if they can find someone that's a great player still available, then they'll take him. I mean, what Carter Coughlin does best will translate to the NFL. Everything Carter Coughlin does will translate good into the NFL. And then you have Kamal Martin. Kamal Martin is also an outside linebacker, but I would use him as an inside linebacker if I took him because I feel like he's just better again in coverage. I mean, and he gets injured a lot, and using an outside linebacker that gets injured a lot is a little bit tougher because they have to do a lot more things or move around a lot more. But inside linebacker, I would take Kamal and use him as an inside linebacker, maybe 7th round pick or even undrafted if he doesn't get drafted, because he does get injured a lot, and that's a huge red flag. That's probably the biggest red flag for teams. Like, how much can this player play? How many games can he start every season? And if teams look at that and they see this player, they might end up passing on him and go to the next linebacker or something like that. So Kamal Adams, we could see this player as a Viking. I think he's more likely than Carter Coughlin, even though I personally like Carter Coughlin better. I feel like with Eric Wilson, with Anthony Barr, they won't take Carter Coughlin. So if there's any players I'm missing, please let me know down below. These are 4 players I think will be in the NFL next year and years to come. And if there's any players, any seniors that you think should be in the NFL, even with free agency, I mean undrafted free agency, even with that, if they don't get drafted and could go to a practice and just do one thing really well, a team will definitely take that. And then just let me know that any players I'm missing, any players you disagree with, and your top 4, if you would list these 4 in possibilities in order, maybe Tyler Johnson being above Antoine Winfield, possibilities. And till next time.